Welcome to the channel. This is Lesson 7, Intro to HDRI Backgrounds and Light. We'll be focusing on learning how to add a background picture and learning how to manipulate different types of lights that are installed within Maya, and more specifically, using Arnold lights and manipulating them. So now this is what we have as our wine bottle right now. Now we are going to work with our lighting. Now the easiest way to work with lighting in an environment like this is to just put an image called an HDRI on this world light, the sky dome light. And how you do that is you essentially go on Google and just type up HDRI images. And there's a whole bunch of links. Polyhaven and textures.com is very famous for its free HDRIs. You can literally just download off of Google, search up your environments like interior, and just pick one. The one that I have chosen is from textures.com, and it's essentially just the first one that I saw. Now let's go back to Maya. Once you've saved that HDRI image, you can click your sky dome light and actually go to color. Same thing, you just click file to add an image. Once it loads, you click on the folder icon, you go to wherever your folders are, and this is the HDRI image. You can open, and now you can see the entire world is your HDRI image. And let's see what happens when we render this. We have our render window already open. Let's click start. Now there are some points where it does not load. Now you just have to cancel and just restart it. If you make any big changes, and the effect will come up. There you go. Now you can see there is lighting and the glass is more visible, but now you can see that there's barely any lighting on the wine bottle itself. It's very dark, you can barely see it. You can barely see the red or the black wax. Now in order to do that, we have to play with our lighting. Let's stop this render, and let's actually click save. Save scene. You always want to keep saving. Now, since we are working with an Arnold renderer, you want to go on the Arnold settings and only use these lights. Now, the best are either sky dome light, which is something you'll use often, or if you don't want to use a sky dome light, you can always use an area light. Area light is kind of like a real life light that works. And you just scale this up, rotate this however you want it. Now I'm clicking in the middle of the sphere so that I can move it however I want to. And this line is actually where the light is aiming at. So you can see the light is going this way. Let's move it up. I want it to hit the wine bottle first. There you go. Now you can always make this bigger or smaller. The bigger it is, the more intensity you need for the light to show up. So let's see if the light shows up here. There's essentially no changes. So what you usually have to do, I'll usually go to 1000 and work from there. There's a tiny bit of changes. You can barely see the red, but it's starting to take effect. Why not add another 0? There you go. You can see the lighting change. Now there is a normalize option where instead of putting so many zeros and making it extremely high, you can just cancel normalize, and now you can actually kind of set it to 0.1, 0.5, but usually I'll work with normalize. There you go. Now because it's very directed on this side of the wine bottle, I think it's best to increase the area. So instead of one specific spot, the whole area is lit up. Let's make this a bit further. and re-render. Now, as I said, because I made it bigger, the light is a lot less. We can change that. That's too much. Decrease it. And I think that's good enough. You can see the wine bottle, you can see the glass. Now, once you create your lights, you will see that the red that we have kind of looks metallic or a different material type. Now, what you want to do is just go back and change your color settings. Let's wine bottle. Color settings, so it looks more like a glass. Metalness, it's too much. Maybe roughness, and you kind of want to just play around with this. What if I were to change it to, there's a glass option, frosted glass. You can see it's kind of like glass. That actually doesn't look bad at all. You can reduce the roughness to make it look a lot like this. Let's change the color to our red. And the reason why they're still blue is because when you have something like frosted glass, they'll usually have transmission colors. You can see the blue light. Let's change it to red. Transmission red. And right now, the base color. Let's change this. I think that looks like a fancy bottle. And we want this wax cover to have a bit less light reflecting off of it. It looks very metallic. Wax isn't so metallic. Let's change this. Specular, that's too dark. Let's actually change this to black or gray. There. Roughness, let's actually increase this. There you go. This does look a bit metallic. And we want to increase the roughness because the color is reflecting off of it a bit too much. We want it a bit see-through. Now you just want to play around with these settings to get. Transmission is essentially the light that is being reflected off of the bottle. I think that is pretty good. And that is essentially your lighting. So your lighting will have a base color. There is no base color right now. Turn it off. No, that's your bottle. So essentially when you click your spotlight, now if you want it to have different colors from different angles, you can always duplicate these and have the light pointed in this direction, coming from here to here. If you want something at the back, you can always reflect that. But now let's look at the settings. You have your color of the spotlight, your intensity, which usually, if the normalize option is active, which I usually have, your number is actually going to range from very little to very, very high. It can go to 1,000,000 in some cases. Exposure is where you don't want your intensity so high, and you can actually increase your exposure instead. Let's just leave the intensity here. If you want to have a dramatic effect on your light, you can just increase this by a tiny bit, and you can see the white light is increasing dramatically. And this is essentially no light if it's -5. Let's actually leave it at 0. Now, if you don't want the light to reflect from one side, like you see here, the white light has a strip and it's being reflected. I'm fine with it, But if you want another source of light, you can add it on this side, and you can have it reflecting from the left side. Spread is how much your light reflects off of a ray. The more smaller you make it, the more direct. Essentially, since it is a square, the spread, if you put it to 0, it's essentially just inside of the square. But as you have spread, it increases the radius. You have your resolution that you don't ever want to touch. It's fine as it is. You can control your shadows. You can even not cast shadows. In this case, since it is glass, you want shadows, and it doesn't make too much of a difference. And that is the only thing that you have to worry about. Your color, intensity, exposure. If you want to play with exposure, if not, you can set it at 0. Spread, you don't usually need to touch unless you want a specific area. And shadows, that's really it. Everything else is fine as it is. Illuminates by default is essentially if you want to make an animation, there's kind of like a switch. You have to code in a switch. If not, if you turn this off, it just turns off. And once it triggers, then it'll turn on. But since it is a static image, we just want it turned on. And that's it. Your spotlights, your area lights are essentially, as you can see, it's a mesh light. It's essentially a mesh that's glowing. So if you want a cube that's glowing, or any shape that's essentially glowing, or any type of glow effect, let's make this bigger. You click your object, you go to your Arnold, create a mesh light. And this will essentially, let's make it dramatic. It will have this square that lights up. And usually if you want it visible, like you want to create a sort of light bulb of any kind, you put your light visible. And that's essentially your light. Now, because this is just essentially a cube, and I think it's a bit too much. Yes. Usually it'll look like this. Something that's glowing and the light is being reflected off of that object. It's useful if you want to create any sort of light. Those old-time light bars that you hang on a roof, you can put it up above, and it'll be like a ceiling light or any kind. Let's delete that for now. That is essentially your mesh light. So once you're done with your mesh light, this photometric light is something that you never really have to use. It kind of works like a sun where the light reflects outwards, but like I said, it's not something that you would practically use. Rather, you would use the sky dome light, which is better. This is a light portal beside your sky dome light and a physical sky. A physical sky is exactly like your sky dome light. These three options, your sky dome, your these three options are essentially identical to each other. See, you can see that it created kind of like a sky. If we were to delete the sky dome, it would just create a visible sky like this. That's if you have nothing. If you want to see the object, now you can actually see the object because of this spotlight that's hitting it, which does look pretty good. If we increase the light, we'll have to. Yep. So that creates a physical sky. It's a very low quality sky. You can change the settings of the colors, but usually you'll never use this. It's better to always use the sky dome light. Let's go back to our sky dome light. There you go. These two are not something that you would ever really use. Maybe the sky if you really need it, but it's better to use sky dome light. Limit yourself to sky dome light and area light. And if you need to create a physical light bulb of any kind, mesh light or anything that glows, mesh light, neon signs will also work with mesh light. And that is it for this section. You can see that we have created a light in kind of a Renaissance building. Now next we'll be worrying about something to make the scene whole, and we'll be using a table, and we'll be creating a cloth and the physics of a cloth using Maya.